There was incredulity around the National Security Committee of the Cabinet yesterday when we were briefed on the details of his record and his life in this country. He seeks to clothe himself in the symbolism and ideology of the ISIL death cult. How much contact he had with them, what individuals he might have been speaking with, what chat rooms or websites he might have been accessing, we just don't know at this stage.
Tony Abbott is Prime Minister of Australia, dealing with the tragedy that struck Sydney. Most recently, Canada has not escaped this. We've had two of the what have been characterized as lone wolf terrorist attacks in the case of Canada. So joining us to discuss this is Patrick Poole. He's a national security and terrorism correspondent for pjmedia.com. Patrick, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. What were your thoughts, sir, when you first heard about what was happening in Australia?
Well, really, my thoughts were, here we go again. We saw the incidents back in late October up in Canada. We've had a number of incidents here inside the United States, the Boston bombing, Fort Hood massacre, and yet time and again, we see that these individuals committing acts of domestic terrorism are well known to law enforcement authorities. And in this particular case with Sheikh Haron, with the Sydney siege, he was out on bail on two separate counts, and he had already been convicted on charges of harassing the widows of soldiers who have been killed in Afghanistan. So we have this ongoing problem, and nobody really wants to address it.
Well, this is the whole concept of the known wolf as opposed to the lone wolf. What about the commonality of the terrorist tendencies of the Islamic teachings that they espouse?
Well, it's a pretty standard ideology. I mean, there's not a lot of variation. There are very common elements, the takfirism, declaring other Muslims, non-Muslims kafirs, so therefore they can be killed. The standard jihad ideology. But in this particular case, in the Sydney situation, he had gone on his own website and openly declared his allegiance to the Islamic State. So for all these terrorism experts to be wringing their hands, oh, there's no way to know, and describing these actors as lone wolves, it is just disingenuous.
Okay, Patrick. Well, in our particular case in Canada, we found out about after the two terrorist attacks, we found out that there are 90 people being watched in this country. Is that the appropriate approach? Because you can't watch all the people out there.
Oh, absolutely, and I actually advocate that we end up throwing up too broad of a net. Here in the United States, you go to the airport, everybody's treated like a terrorist. I mean, we're investing considerable resources into treating everybody as terrorists because we don't want to acknowledge that this is coming from a very limited pool of individuals. So, I think there needs to be some reconsideration of what exactly these policies are getting us. Yes, these people might be under surveillance, but time and again we see that these individuals who are under surveillance end up committing acts of terror. The Boston bombers, Tamerlane Tsarnaev, the Russians told the FBI on two separate occasions that he was trouble. They investigated, and then it did nothing with it. So there's a systematic breakdown with how Western law enforcement authorities are confronting this problem.
How do you fix that breakdown?
There needs to be a change of political will. I mean, we're in this prison house of political correctness that, we can't even acknowledge the 800-pound gorilla sitting on the couch beside us, for fear of political correctness or these various NGOs who will, call individuals' names and send out press releases get their masses animated to prevent any substantive measures. In fact, Sheikh Haron was openly protesting the new Australian anti-terrorism measures just here a couple months ago, but he wasn't alone. The Grand Mufti of Australia, who supposedly came out and denounced this act of terrorism, he too was publicly confronting the Australian government for trying to pass these new anti-terrorism measures. And so what I think our policymakers need to do is we need to stop listening to these people and do what we have to do to protect the citizens. That's their job.
Patrick, we will have to leave it there, but thank you for your insight.